demands, which include the following: an 8% increase across the board, job security for at least 3 years, insourcing of all service providers that are outsourced and which SAA has the capacity to fulfill. Example, the security, cleaning, IT, ground handling, and logistics. Pilots received a 5.9% increase, and SAA agreed to pay them. Our members are simply demanding their increase as well. Our members earn much lower than the pilots, which is why our demand is one of 8%. In response to these demands, SAA management served us with the intention to retrench and restructure the airline. They claim that they cannot meet our demands because there is not enough money, and that the dismissal of 944 workers will save the airline 700 million and ensure its survival. We as SACA Numsa reject their explanation, and it's our view that this is nothing more than an attempt to force workers to stop and drop their demands for wage increases, which they deserve and that they have worked very hard for. The South African Airways Board and Executive Management is responsible for the current crisis affecting the airline. Through their actions, they have deliberately destroyed what used to be one of the world's best airlines because of maladministration, rampant looting, corruption, and in 2015, workers were retrenched. And the exact same reasons were given then. That process has clearly failed to deliver on the results because 4 years later, management is retrenching again. I'd like to give reasons as to the true cause of SAA's crisis. The South African Airways Board and Executive Management are a total failure. Whilst it is true that SAA is hugely in debt, we argue that this crisis has deliberately been created by those tasked with leading this institution. The board of South African Airways must be removed because they are at the heart of this crisis. They failed in their fiduciary duties to ensure that this airline operates profitably. 8 long-term turnaround strategies have been designed for this airline, and none of them have been implemented. The LTTS was designed to ensure that the airline returns to profitability and improve the sales, revenue, and optimize SAA's business. The executive leadership, together with the board, have failed to fulfill a simple aspect of their responsibilities, and this is why that we say the entire board must be fired. We reject the claim made by the board that the strike is intended to collapse the airline so that it can be placed under liquidation. Workers have been in the forefront of trying to save SAA and make it viable. Our members have been fighting against corruption. Some were even fired doing this. And yet, the same cannot be done for executives and management and the board. This has consistently been an obstacle in rooting out corruption at the airline. Several executives have been exposed in corrupt activities through costly forensic investigations, 9 in total, but none have been disciplined or suspended or fired. To date, not 1 red cent has been recovered from monies which were stolen through acts of corruption and looting at South African Airways. South African Airways has failed to review all erroneous contracts and correct those matters by renegotiating the pricing and making it more competitive and cost-effective. South African Airways currently spends 25 billion per annum on procurement. It is done on a global basis, as opposed to normal SOE and airline. That compete aggressively with other world-class airlines. The bulk of this procurement spend is done in foreign currency, and this has a direct impact on its revenue. We believe that there are certain services which can be procured locally, and this has been highlighted in the Ernst & Young forensic investigation report. It talks about the unacceptably high fuel, ground handling, and cargo costs which SAA is paying for, The report was completed in December 2015, and the shareholder at the time was the National Treasury under Minister Pravin Gordhan, as he was the finance minister then. He is now currently the Minister of Public Enterprises. The report has also red flagged evergreen contracts with inflated pricing, such as Swissport. And when you analyze the cost of Mango ground handling service, for example, versus the same service at Swissport, the difference is a whopping 150%. It is difficult to understand why this relationship continues when it is clear that the airline is grossly overcharged. SAA frequently depends on consultants to do work. For example, Tata Consultancy, an Indian company who is responsible for revenue management. They operate as accountants at an exorbitant cost to the airline. It boggles the mind why SAA cannot employ locals to do this work. They're actually looking for an international chief executive officer to run the airline, which will no doubt have massive impacts on staffing costs. This reminds us of a time when Peter Davies from the UK was appointed as the CRO of South African Airways at a cost of 20 million per annum. He also used to fly back and forth to the UK at SAA's costs. Another example, they hired Accenture to do organizational design, which has not yet been concluded. This was done to a cost of 30 million. SAA wants to proceed with restructuring when its organizational design is incomplete. It makes no sense. And this is the type of wastage that we reject because it is used as a barrier to prevent workers from getting their increases. In the last 3 years, as unions, we have done everything in our power to force SAA to clean up and root out corruption. We have held frequent marches. We have had campaigns. We have picketed. We have also gone to court at a great expense to ourselves, and we have had to defend frivolous court cases and even open criminal cases against SAA in an attempt to force management and the board to act in the interests of South African Airways and run a profitable airline. Unfortunately, the board and management have done everything in their power, including frustrating a very capable group CEO that is left by Vuyani Jahana in order to collapse the airline. We are now left with no choice but to resort to this drastic action by withdrawing our labor and going on strike. Our first goal is to #save SAA and to save jobs. It is unacceptable that 11,000 workers must sacrifice their livelihoods for the failures of a corrupt board and incompetent management. Our members are ready to defend South African Airways, and we call on all other workers to join us in this protected strike. Aluta continua, comrades. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, comrades. Okay, we're going to take a round of questions now. Just from various media houses. We'll take, like I said, we'll probably take 2 to 3 rounds. Yeah? So I'm opening the floor to questions. I'm going to ask that you please put up your hands, give us your name, the name of your media house, and your question, and then we'll answer after we've gotten some questions. Okay, who wants to start? Yes?
Paul Mandulane from EWN. SA is in trouble, and we've named a number of issues as to why, but everyone is looking for money. Where should they get it? Because government could bail out, saying they're threatening to dismiss people. So where do you think all this money is going to come from if they say that they got the money every day and they're getting bailouts every day from Treasury?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yes, Ndomi?
Nozido Winyaka, SABC TV News. This really does feed off the previous question. SAA is saying that they're looking to work with the unions and to work with staff in terms of looking at alternative measures as opposed to retrenchments. what has been put on the table for them to look at.
Okay, next question. Yeah.
Nalini Mashishi, Reuters News. How many Numsa and SACCA members do you anticipate will join the strike action?
Thank you. Yes.
From ENCA.
Yes.
Just some clarity. Yesterday at the SAA press briefing, we were told that the recognized unions were invited to a meeting on the 11th of November and none of the unions attended. It was a meeting to clarify the current situation and try to find a way forward between management and the union. So just some clarity there on what SAA says happened.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll answer that set and then we'll go and do another round, okay? Will you take the questions, Comrade? Okay, the General Secretary will...
I don't understand the question, but I think I heard it properly. We have given you a solid breakdown of the wastage of money, but I think the problem is deeper than that. I think what we are faced with in this country when it comes to SOEs, there is a particular center, which is the National Treasury, which is the DPE led by Minister Pravin Gordhan, where in those two ministries, what we basically are confronted with, we are confronted by a rampant right-wing capitalist agenda to auction, to attack all hard-won gains of workers. You're asking us a question, where is SA going to get the money? From where we're sitting, we don't buy the story that because we run around the world to promise the World Bank, IMF, and rating agencies that in order for South African people to get jobs and to get investment, it must be at the expense of them and the government basically embarking on belt tightening, austerity measures. We firmly believe that SAA and ESCOM must continue to be funded by the state. And we know that everything else, if you're looking at ESCOM, we got a special paper to unbundle, to auction ESCOM power station, to sell it. In SAA, you got Rothschilds, where basically Kingston is sitting direct in the board. You would know that before Jahana would have left. In fact, media houses kept quiet. We all made a hula baloo about the Guptas in that house. Where you remember the house? You remember that house? Saxon Weald, where everybody used to say, I was in Saxon Weald. But when Rothschild's meeting of SAA take place at Rothschild's, nobody makes an issue. In other words, there is a state capture that is accepted in this country. That SAA, for instance, Kingston would have gone to Parliament and opened his mouth very widely that basically SA must be privatized because they are ready to make sure that it is auctioned, it is privatized, as they are doing the same to privatize ESCOM. So from where we stand is that if they think that we are going to fold arms and allow workers' jobs, benefits, and conditions to be destroyed, and these assets of the people to be basically auctioned, through the strike, we are going to embark on a rolling mass action. On Monday, we will be approaching SAFTU to basically say, we're not just facing workers' job loss bloodbath as a result of retrenchment, which, by the way, we reject this retrenchment, which is the decoy that is being deployed so that workers must pull back, not to demand their genuine demands. We will be calling on SAFTU that it must lead a mother of all battle against privatization, against job losses. We're sick and tired of the fiasco of investment conferences, but at the end of the day, we see no job creation. What we see is a permanent attack on hard-won gains of workers. We think that the best way to turn around this economy is for workers to turn to the street and basically demand that the state must intervene in the economy. It must play its role to stimulate the economy and to create jobs, because clearly these austerity measures are basically going to destroy the left capacity of manufacturing and industrialization that we have in this country. And of course, I mean, workers are affected by the socio-economic condition. To expect that workers at SAA must basically embark on belt tightening. We are saying come Friday, workers must fight for themselves, and all other workers must give solidarity to workers at SAA. And we're calling for the South African public to understand that we cannot continue to allow this government to do as it wishes. We have kept quiet for too long. Well, there was a question about 300, how many workers will participate in the strike? We want all workers. In fact, we're grounding the airline on Friday. That airline must not move. Workers must stool down. And we will be, as we resume, this strike will be an indefinite strike until these people come to the table. And as we resume the strike, we will be actually be giving them another notice for secondary strike. If they think that we are playing, they must actually watch what is coming. We're calling on our members to be united. This is their time to stand up. I mean, there comes a time in the history of any nation, whether you submit or fight. From where we're sitting, we're saying our members deserve that increase. It is time for SAA management, Kingston, to stop going around lying. They must come to the table between now and Friday and actually make an offer that can avert the strike, failing which we are indeed going to pull the strike on Friday.
The meeting.
I think with regards to the meeting, we dispute that unions were invited. In fact, I received the notice in the evening of Monday. At the time when we received the notice, the issue of retrenchment was already across all media houses. And moreover, ordinary workers of SAA were not aware about the notices. So we dismiss those allegations that we were invited and we didn't attend. In fact, on Friday we met the executives of SAA to discuss the financial challenges of SAA. At no stage that they have indicated that they are intending to file a Section 189 notice. Also, they were on record on the Friday meeting that the organizational design is still incomplete. It is a shock to us now. If the new organizational design it is incomplete, how do you then begin to start to issue Section 189? And we are not surprised, in fact. In 2015, when they retrenched about more than 1,000 workers, they did the same. Instead, we discovered that, in fact, they wanted to retrench ordinary workers in order to duplicate management position. As we speak, this is what they are doing. SAA Technical have just increased the wage bill with more than 20 million by hiring a general manager, which some are not required. Because if you will look to the long turnaround strategy of SAA, it indicates very clear which services that will be shared across the group. I mean, those positions at the executive and managerial level, if you will take one of the biggest SOE, Transnet has a leaner managerial structure as compared to SAA. So this must not be actually directed to workers. Management needs to deal with themselves. Throughout all this retrenchment, at those days that SAA management have reduced. Last year there was a retrenchment within SAA. SAA retrenched workers from HFs. SAA reduced number of cabin crew. SAA reduced number of pilots. At no stage that they have ever decided that to reduce their numbers. In fact, managers are loafering within the head office without even having subordinates that report to them. So if then they need to retrench themselves and leave workers, because those workers of SAA continue to reduce due to natural attrition, and some were retrenched. So you can't then say SAA is actually bloated in terms of the total workforce. If then you come with that claim, you need to say, where is your barometer? Because you can't compare SAA with the local airlines. You must compare SAA apples with apples. Take SAA to international airlines and see the number that SAA has versus the number of other airlines that SAA compete with, not only on the local level. If you want to take the on a local level, just take a mango alone, and then you can compete mango locally. But when it comes to the entire SAA, you need to measure SAA global, not local.
Okay. Second round of questions. Any more questions from anyone from the floor? Yes, your name and your media house, please.
Smashing from Just, getting to Friday strike, are you guys still open to talks with management, or is this a done deal?
Well, a strike is not a dinner party, so we going on strike, this will be no work, no pay for workers. A strike is a sacrifice. And therefore, right from after we finish with this press conference tomorrow, we will be open for engagement. This is not a strike about anything. This is a strike to demand that they must meet those just demands of workers and improve workers' benefits and conditions.
I think also we are also well aware that they are planning to interdict this strike, and we are not sure. In fact, in July we were at CCMA in relation some of our demands when it comes to governance of SAA, which they brought lawyers, and we fought across all those demands. In fact, we just issued now a secondary notice that relates to the board issues, all the issues that the board have not taken on fiduciary. So our strike is not only relating to wage-related issues, it also cut across, including with governance issues that we have been fighting with them since 2015 around. So all that we are demanding is for them to execute their fiduciary duties as the boss. That is why we said we lack confidence in this board. This board needs to be dissolved, and SAA needs a committed new board that will actually be represented even by labor, because we also know where the problems are within the airline.
Yes.
Sorry, Lady from Reuters again. Do you have any fears that embarking on a strike action could potentially put SAA into even further financial constraints?
You remind me of a story of workers in Canada. Workers takes a decision on the basis of facts and concrete conditions that confront them. It's not a joke. We're saying SAA is spending about 25 billion per annum. We're saying about 30 million have just been wasted on an organizational design. An organizational design, what is 30 million? Why would you spend 30 million on an organizational design? And we're telling you of a particular pattern. And if this pattern is allowed to continue, it means indeed there will be no job security for workers. We're taking a stand so that not just to say our demands, the demands of our members must be met, but we're saying SAA must be fixed so that it does not collapse. You allow it with Kingston and that bunch of board members who do not know whether they are coming or going, then indeed SAA will shut.
And can I just add, you talk about, the fear of this crippling. Does management understand that this could cripple the airline? Because to date, no one has called us to discuss these issues on the table. The CEO has not called us once to try and, sort out the dispute. Sorry.
It looks like SAA. It looks like SAA. SAA.
So what I'm saying is that by virtue of the fact that we are willing to talk and no one is talking to us, We have written to the presidency. We have written to the minister. There's no one that we have not written to, I think. And no one is prepared to engage on issues of corruption so that they don't want to meet us, you know? So unfortunately, if no one wants to meet us, we have got to be heard. And this is the only way that we know as Labour on how to be heard. This is the only way. But we're always open to engagements. We have a day and a few hours, I think, to talk. And we are here.
And if I can just add on what Comrade Zazi said about being open to talk, I think it's very important that in relation to what Comrade Viwe said about the interdict, you know, consider how much it costs to go to court and apply for an interdict. How much it costs in terms of hourly rates for advocates and attorneys. SAA is willing to waste that money, right, rather than actually calling us in for a meeting. And I think that again speaks to the wasteful expenditure. Surely it would be cheaper for them to pick up the phone and say, comrades, let's sit and talk and see if we can find each other so that we don't have to go on strike. It's important that media must understand that workers, as GS said, are going without pay to do this. So they are the ones actually making the ultimate sacrifice already, you know. They are the ones who are making the sacrifices. Where are the sacrifices that are being made at the highest levels, where we see most of the wastage? Any more questions?
We're done.
Right.
They look happy.
All right, with that, comrades, thank you so much for coming. Those of you who want one-on-ones, please come to me and I'll arrange them. I see your hand, SABC. Otherwise, we hope that you'll join us on the picket line on Friday morning. Thank you very much.
It's for the good of the workers.
All right, so we come out of that media briefing by the South African Cabin Crew Association and Numsa briefing the media with relation to the strike that is looming, of course. So they say that they have between today and Friday to talk to the South African Airways to see if they can map a way forward to try to avoid retrenchment. So Numsa, they're saying that the South African Airways should consider other options before looking into retrenching some staff members. They spoke about the organizational design, which they say it's very much incomplete. So the Crew Association, they're basically saying that they have tried everything that they could. They've written to the president, they've written to the minister, they've written to everyone to raise the issues and the concerns that they have, but till this day they have not received any response.
Yeah, strong words there from the unions in particular, saying that there will be indefinite rolling mass action because management needs to learn. They talked about the corruption that's been existing at SAA, the incompetence of the board, and wastages on consultants, for example. And they're saying that why should the workers be made to pay for the ills of management? So a showdown certainly looming, and they're saying that nobody seems to want to talk to us, and we're going to be force them to be heard. We'll keep abreast of that story for you and as it develops.
All right, so I suppose a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on SA Today on this Wednesday afternoon. I am Balesa Chubisi.
And I'm Peter Ndorum. Now, the 2019 African Investment Forum has wrapped up in Sandton.